Her wicked mother-in-law wanted her mad. Once upon a time, in the heart of the golden savanna, where the rivers sang to the wind and the baobab trees stood as ancient sentinels, there was a village called Zubri. It was a land blessed with rich soil, where farmers tilled the earth under the watchful gaze of the sun, and women wove stories into cloth with their skilled hands. It was here that a young woman named Adia lived, a woman whose beauty was not only in her features but in her heart. Adia was known for her kindness. She was a healer, trained in the wisdom of her ancestors. She could mend broken bones, ease a child's fever, and even whisper prayers that made crops grow strong. The people of Zubri adored her, but fate had woven a path for her that would test her spirit beyond anything she had ever known. Her heart belonged to Jengo, a man whose name meant strength, and strength he had, not just in his broad shoulders but in the gentleness of his soul. He was a hunter, swift and sharp-eyed, a man who walked with honor. The two had loved each other since childhood, their bond growing like the sturdy roots of the acacia tree. But there was one shadow that loomed over their happiness: Mama Abena, Jengo's mother. Mama Abena was a woman feared by many, a widow whose words cut sharper than a warrior's spear. She had raised Jengo and his brothers alone, commanding respect and obedience with an iron will. Her heart had long turned to stone, and though she loved her sons, she did not believe any woman was worthy of them, especially not Adia. When Jengo announced his intention to marry Adia, the village rejoiced, but Mama Abena's lips curled in disdain. She did not voice her objections immediately. No, she was far too cunning for that. Instead, she smiled, a smile that did not reach her eyes, and welcomed Adia into her home. "You are welcome, my daughter," she said, her voice like the whisper of dry leaves. A wife must serve her husband's family well. But Adia, wise beyond her years, saw the flicker of malice in the old woman's gaze. She knew that the true test of her love had only just begun. The first trial. The morning after Adia moved into Jengo's home, Mama Abena gave her a task, one that seemed simple on the surface. "The water from the common well is not sweet enough," she said, feigning dissatisfaction. "You must fetch water from the river of echoes, far beyond the village. Only that water will do." The river of echoes was known to all. It was a sacred place where the spirits were said to whisper in the winds. It was also deep in the heart of the forest, where only the bravest dared to go alone. Mama Abena knew this well. Jengo, seeing the distance of the task, offered to accompany Adia, but Mama Abena quickly objected. "A wife must learn to stand on her own," she said with a sly smile. And so, before the sun had fully risen, Adia set out alone. The journey was long, the heat of the day wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. The trees stood tall and unyielding, their shadows stretching across her path like silent warnings. As she approached the river, she heard the rustling of leaves, a whisper carried by the wind. She knelt beside the water, feeling the large calabash gourd she had carried, when a strange feeling crawled up her spine. She was being washed. A low growl rumbled from the trees. Slowly, she turned her head, and her heart nearly stopped. A lion. Its golden eyes locked onto hers, its massive body partially hidden by the tall grass. It was not attacking, not yet. But she knew that if she ran, it would chase. Adia's fingers tightened around the gourd, her mind racing. She remembered the wisdom of her grandmother: when faced with a beast, do not show fear. Show respect. Summoning every ounce of courage, Adia took a deep breath. She bent down slowly and scooped a handful of water from the river, lifting it towards the lion. "O great spirit of the wild," she whispered, "I offer you this water, as the ancestors have offered it before." The lion stared at her for what felt like eternity. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, it turned away, disappearing into the trees as silently as it had come. Adia exhaled, her hands shaking slightly as she finished filling the gourd. She had passed the first trial. Mama Abena's rage. When Adia returned to the village, dusty and weary but victorious, she handed the water to Mama Abena with a respectful bow. "I have brought the water, mother," she said. Mama Abena took the gourd, peered inside, and then, with a dramatic flourish, threw it onto the ground. The water splashed over the dry earth, wasted. "This is not the water I asked for," she spat, her eyes gleaming with cruel delight. "Did you not listen to my instructions? I told you to bring water that is sweet. This water tastes like dust." A gasp rippled through the gathered villagers. Jengo's brow furrowed in anger, but before he could speak, Adia knelt down and began gathering the shattered pieces of the gourd, her face calm. "I will bring another," she said simply. Mama Abena narrowed her eyes. This was not the reaction she had expected. Most women would have wept, pleaded for her favor. But Adia stood tall, her dignity unshaken. That would not do. Mama Abena needed to break her, to crush her spirit before Jengo's love grew too strong to be swayed. That night, as Adia and Jengo sat together beneath the baobab tree, she told him of the lion, of the whispering spirits of the river, of the trial she had faced alone. Jengo took her hands in his heart swelling with pride. "You are braver than even the warriors of our village," he murmured. And for the first time, he looked at his mother with suspicion. The war had begun. Mama Abena, watching from the shadows, clenched her fist. Adia had not broken. Yet. She had underestimated the girl. But there were many ways to break a person. She would push Adia harder. She would whisper to the village, plant doubts, twist truths. And when the time was right, she would make the whole world believe that Adia was mad. But Adia, stronger than Mama Abena had ever imagined, was prepared for the trials ahead. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She would not break. Not now. Not ever. The hidden war begins. The morning sun painted the sky in hues of gold and orange, but in Zubur village, shadows stretched long beneath the towering baobab trees. Inside the small hut where Adia and Jengo lived, the scent of fresh porridge filled the air. Adia hummed softly as she stirred the pot over the fire. Despite the trial she had faced the day before, she refused to let her heart be burdened with bitterness. She had won a battle against Mama Abena, but she knew the war was far from over. Jengo sat nearby, sharpening his hunting spear. He had spent much of the night in restless thought. His mother had always been a formidable woman, but now he saw a cruelty in her that troubled him deeply. "Adia," he said at last, "I should speak to my mother about the way she treats you." Adia turned, her dark eyes full of understanding. "No, my love," she said gently. "A seed must be allowed to grow before it can bear fruit. I must prove my place here, not demand it." Jengo sighed. "You are kinder than I am. But I will not stand by and let her mistreat you." Adia smiled but said nothing. She knew that Mama Abena's spirit was like a storm. If one tried to fight it head-on, it would only rage harder. And so, when Mama Abena emerged from her hut that morning, her eyes sharp as a vulture's, Adia was ready. A trick of the spirits. Mama Abena sat under the baobab tree, watching the village women pass by with their baskets of yams and millet. The scent of morning fires and cooking filled the air, but her mind was elsewhere. She needed to break Adia, slowly, methodically. She would make the girl believe she was going mad. "Adia," she called sweetly, her voice dripping with false kindness. Adia, who was sweeping the yard, turned. "Yes, mother. The house is full of dust. You must sweep it again. But this time, use the sacred broom from the house of the ancestors." A hush fell over the villagers who overheard this. The house of the ancestors was the shrine where the village elders kept sacred relics. It was forbidden for a woman to enter without permission. Adia's heart pounded, but she did not let her fear show. She bowed her head. As you wish, mother. Mama Abena's lips curled into a sly smile. As Adia walked toward the shrine, whispers followed her. Would she dare disobey the village's sacred customs? If she did, would the spirits punish her? She reached the small wooden hut that housed the sacred relics and hesitated. The air was thick, heavy, as if unseen eyes were watching her. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The darkness swallowed her whole. The smell of ancient herbs and dried incense filled the space. Strange carvings lined the walls, and in the center of the hut stood a wooden staff wrapped in red cloth, the sacred broom. Adia hesitated. Something was wrong. A whisper slithered through the air. Who dares enter? Adia froze. Her breath hitched. Had she imagined it? The room darkened further, and the whispers grew louder. You do not belong here. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the hut, sending the relics shaking. A pot toppled over, shattering at her feet. Then, silence. Adia clenched her fist, forcing herself to stand tall. She had been raised to honor the spirits, but she also knew that not all whispers were from the ancestors. Some belonged to those who wished to deceive. She reached for the broom, gripped it firmly, and turned. And there, in the shadows, stood a figure. It was small, cloaked in rags, its face hidden. But its voice, when it spoke, sent shivers through her bones. Do not trust her, Adia. Adia's breath caught. Who are you? She whispered. A friend, it murmured. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into thin air. Adia's pulse pounded, but she did not allow herself to falter. She would not give Mama Abena the satisfaction of fear. With steady steps, she left the shrine, carrying the broom. The villagers gasped as she emerged. Mama Abena's eyes widened in shock. How? Adia walked past her and began sweeping. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty passed over Mama Abena's face. Perhaps the girl was stronger than she had thought. The whispering begins. That night, as the fires dimmed and the village fell into slumber, Mama Abena did not sleep. She had seen something in Adia's eyes. Defiance. Strength. A quiet power. She could not allow it to grow. So, she began whispering to the village women. She is touched by spirits, she murmured. Did you not see her walk out of the shrine unharmed? She must have made a deal with them, another woman agreed. By morning, the whispers had spread like wildfire. Mama Abena watched with satisfaction as villagers began to look at Adia with suspicion. And then, she delivered her final strike. Jengo, she sighed, pretending to wipe tears from her eyes. I fear for you, my son. Jengo looked up, alarmed. Why, mother? Adia, she speaks to spirits in the dark. I have seen her. She carries shadows with her. Jengo frowned. That is nonsense. Adia is no sorceress. Mama Abena placed a trembling hand over her heart. I know you love her, my son, but love can blind us. The spirits do not lie. Be careful. Or soon, she may turn on you, too. Jengo's expression hardened, but doubt flickered in his eyes. And Mama Abena smiled. She had planted the first seed of fear. The madness takes hold. The village of Zubiri was never silent. Even in the stillness of the night, the wind whispered through the baobab trees, and the distant hoot of an owl carried secrets through the air. But tonight, a different kind of whisper spread, one woven with fear and superstition. Adia's name was on everyone's lips. The once beloved healer was now a woman to be feared. Mama Abena's lies had taken root, and the villagers, many of whom had once sought Adia's wisdom, began to look at her with wary eyes. The stories had twisted into something sinister. She entered the sacred shrine and did not perish. What does that tell you? She spoke to shadows. Perhaps she walks among them. Her beauty is deceiving. She is not what she seems. Each word, each murmur, carried more venom than a scorpion's sting. And it was not long before even Jengo, the man who had vowed to love Adia beyond life itself, began to waver. The curse took shape. The first time it happened, Adia thought she was dreaming. She woke in the dead of night, her body covered in cold sweat. The air around her was thick, suffocating, as if the room had been swallowed by the dark. Then she heard it. A voice, low, slithering, inside her heart. Adia. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned, her heart pounding like a drum. The shadows in the corner shifted. A figure emerged, its face hidden, its eyes like two burning coals. You do not belong here. Adia gasped, clutching her chest. The figure lunged. With a cry, she grabbed the nearest object, her wooden comb, and threw it at the shadow. But as soon as it left her hand, the figure vanished. The room was silent. The only sound was the ragged rise and fall of Adia's breath. She sat frozen, staring at the empty corner. Had it been real? Or was she truly going mad? She barely slept after that. And the next morning, when she stepped outside her hut, she saw Mama Abena watching her. Smiling. Jengo's doubt. At first, Jengo dismissed the rumors. My Adia is no sorceress, he told his friends, his brothers, even his mother. She is the kindest soul in Zubri. But the whispers did not stop. One evening, as Jengo prepared to leave for a night hunt, a village elder pulled him aside. You are a good man, Jengo, the elder said. But do not be blind to what is before you. Jengo frowned. What do you mean? The elder glanced around before lowering his voice. Your wife speaks to shadows. Jengo's body tensed. That is a lie. The elder shook his head. Then explained this. He pulled out a small, blackened charm, a doll made of woven grass, its eyes hollow and empty. We found this near your hut. Jengo's blood ran cold. I do not know who put it there, the elder continued, but the spirits have spoken. If she is cursed, you must act before it is too late. Jengo felt a war rage inside him. He loved Adia, he loved her with every part of his being. But the village was not just a home. It was law. If the elders turned against Adia, what could he do? Mama Abena's deadliest move. The time had come. Mama Abena watched as Jengo grew more troubled by the day. She saw the way Adia's shoulders hunched, the way the villagers now moved away from her as she passed. But she needed one final blow, one act that would shatter Adia completely. And she knew exactly what to do. One afternoon, while Adia was tending to the village children, Mama Abena slipped into her hut. She moved quickly, her fingers working with precision. From the folds of her robe, she pulled out a small bag of powdered bark, bitterroot, a plant known to cause terrible visions. She sprinkled it onto Adia's water jug, laughing softly to herself. By nightfall, the curse would take hold. And Adia would no longer be seen as a victim. She would be seen as a madwoman. The night of madness. That evening, Adia sat beside Jengo in their hut, exhaustion weighing on her bones. I feel strange, she murmured, rubbing her forehead. Jengo placed a hand on her back. You have been working too hard, he said gently. She smiled weakly and reached for her water jug. She drank deeply, the cool liquid easing her parched throat. But the moment the water touched her stomach, something changed. Her skin burned. Her vision blurred. The walls of the hut shifted, warping, stretching, breathing. And then, she saw them. Figures, emerging from the shadows. Their limbs twisted, their eyes hollow. Their whispers grew louder, louder, louder. You are one of us now. Come, Adia. Come into the dark. She screamed. Jengo leapt to his feet. Adia. What's wrong? She stumbled back, clutching her head. They are here. They are here. Jengo's eyes widened in horror. Who, Adia? Who is here? Adia turned wildly, pointing to the shadows. But the room was empty. Jengo saw nothing. Nothing but his wife, trembling, eyes wide with terror, screaming at nothing. The moment Mama Abena had been waiting for had arrived. Jengo rushed to Adia, gripping her shoulders. It's all right, my love, it's all right. But she fought against him, thrashing like a wild animal. And then, the villagers heard. The screaming. The chaos. And soon, they gathered outside the hut. Mama Abena stood at the front, feigning sorrow. What is happening? She asked, her voice trembling with false worry. A villager peeked inside, and saw Adia, collapsed on the ground, whispering frantically to something unseen. The whispers turned to gasps. She is cursed. She is speaking to spirits. Mama Abena shook her head in disappointment. I feared this would happen. Jengo looked to his mother, then back at his wife. A choice had to be made. And as Adia sobbed in his arms, her body shaking with the effects of the bitterroot, Jengo knew one thing for certain. The village would not let this go. Exile into darkness. The sky over Zubri village was a deep, bruised purple, the kind of color that came before a storm. The air was thick with tension as the villagers stood outside Adia and Jengo's hut, their eyes wide with fear and suspicion. The woman they once knew as a healer, a kind soul, a beloved wife was now seen as something else entirely. A woman possessed. Jengo held Adia in his arms, her body trembling as whispers clawed at her mind. The cursed drink had done its work, visions tormented her, voices whispered in her ears, and shadows moved where there were none. Jengo, she gasped, clutching his tunic. Don't let them take me. Jengo's heart twisted, but his mother's voice rang sharp and unwavering. It is too late, my son, Mama Abena said, stepping forward. The spirits have marked her. If we do not send her away, she will bring ruin to us all. A murmur rippled through the villagers. Fear had already sunk its roots into their hearts. Jengo's hands tightened around Adia. No. I will not abandon her. Mama Abena's face contorted in practiced grief. Do you not see? She is speaking to the dead. She is cursed. Would you let the spirits take you too? The village elder, a wrinkled man with eyes full of unease, stepped forward. We cannot take risks, Jengo. She must leave. Jengo shook his head violently. She is my wife. Mama Abena placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft and poisonous. Would you sacrifice the entire village for one woman? Jengo froze. The villagers were watching him, judging him. And then the moment of betrayal came. Take her, Jengo said, his voice hollow. A cry tore from Adia's lips, raw and filled with disbelief. Jengo, she sobbed, reaching for him, but the villagers were already moving. They grabbed her wrist, pulling her from his grasp. Jengo, please. But Jengo did not move. The look in his eyes, shame, doubt, fear, was the last thing she saw before she was dragged into the night. The forest of the forgotten. They took her far beyond the village, where the land turned wild and the air smelled of damp earth. Here, among the twisting trees and whispering winds, was the forest of the forgotten, a place where those cursed, mad, or forsaken were left to die. The villagers threw Adia to the ground. You must never return, the elder said. If you do, we will not show mercy. And then, they left. One by one, their torches flickered into the darkness. Adia lay there for what felt like hours, staring at the sky. She had lost everything. Her home. Her husband. Her name. Even the stars, once so familiar, now felt foreign and distant. The wind howled through the trees, and for the first time, fear took hold of her heart. She was alone. Or so she thought. The woman in the shadows. The first night in the forest was a nightmare. Adia wandered aimlessly, her feet aching, her stomach hollow with hunger. The cursed visions still clung to her mind, twisting the shapes of trees into looming spirits, their skeletal hands reaching for her. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. She had to fight it. But just as she thought she might collapse, she heard something move. A soft shuffle. A breath. Adia spun, her heart hammering. From the darkness, an old woman stepped forward. Her back was curved like the trunk of an ancient tree, her skin wrinkled like parched earth. She wore a robe made of stitched animal hides, and around her neck hung a collection of bones, beads, and charms. Adia's breath caught in her throat. Who are you? The old woman's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. I have been waiting for you. Adia shivered. Waiting, for me? The woman's eyes gleamed like embers in the dark. Yes, child. I have seen your fate written in the wind. Adia took a step back. I don't believe in fate. The old woman chuckled. Oh, but fate believes in you. She extended a gnarled hand. Come. You have much to learn. Adia hesitated. She had no reason to trust this woman. But then again, she had nothing left to lose. And so, she followed her. The truth of the curse. The old woman led Adia to a hidden cave, its entrance covered in vines. Inside, a fire burned low, casting shadows on the walls. Sit, the woman commanded. Adia obeyed. The woman knelt before the fire, throwing a handful of crushed leaves into the flames. A thick, fragrant smoke rose, curling like fingers into the air. Tell me, child, she said, peering at Adia through the haze. Do you know why they cast you out? Adia swallowed the lump in her throat. They think I'm cursed. The woman hummed. And do you believe them? Adia clenched her fist. No. I don't know. Something is wrong, but I am not mad. The woman nodded slowly. Then listen carefully, child. For the truth is more terrible than you know. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Mama Abena has placed a spell on you. Adia's breath hitched. A spell. The old woman nodded. She used the bitter root. A powerful herb that poisons the mind, creating visions of shadows and whispers of spirits. Adia's head spun. It all made sense now, the nightmares, the voices, the illusions. Mama Abena had done this to her. Her hands trembled with rage. Why, she whispered. Why would she do this to me? The old woman's gaze was dark and knowing. Because she feared you. Adia blinked. Feared me. She saw the strength in you, child. The power of your spirit. She knew that if Jengo loved you fully, you would be his greatest weakness, and his greatest strength. And she could not allow that. Adia's chest tightened. So she made me look mad. Just to turn the village against me. The woman nodded. She knew that once fear took root, there would be no saving you. Adia's blood burned. Mama Abena had stolen everything from her. But she was not broken. Not yet. She lifted her chin, her voice steady. How do I undo this curse? The old woman smiled, a slow, proud smile. You are stronger than you know, child. She reached into a woven basket and pulled out a small clay vial. This will purge the poison from your body, she said, placing it in Adia's hands. But be warned, breaking a spell is not enough. If you wish to return, you must make them see the truth. Adia gripped the vial, her heart steady for the first time in days. I will make them see, she vowed. And what of Jengo? The woman asked. Adia's face hardened. Jengo betrayed me. The fire crackled between them, and in its flickering light, Adia made a choice. She would return to Zubri. Not as a woman broken. Not as a woman cast out. But as a woman who would take back everything that was stolen from her. The time for suffering had ended. The time for vengeance had begun. The return of the wrong woman. The forest no longer felt like a place of exile. It had become a forge, a place where Adia's spirit was tempered, reshaped, made unbreakable. Days had passed since she had swallowed the old woman's potion, purging the poison from her veins. The whispers had faded. The visions had ceased. She was no longer the trembling, cast-out wife. She was something else entirely. She was a woman reborn. The old woman, Mama Esh, as she had come to know her, had become both mentor and guide. She taught Adia how to listen to the wind, to understand the hidden language of the earth. But most importantly, she had taught Adia the truth of power. You do not need magic to make them see, child, Mama Esh had said. Fear and truth are the only spells that matter in this world. If you wield them right, they will bow before you. And so, Adia prepared to return to Zubri. She did not return as a beggar pleading for justice. She would return as a storm. A village in ruins. When Adia stepped onto the outskirts of Zubri, she knew something was wrong. The village was different. The marketplace, once lively with laughter and barter, was silent. Smoke curled from charred huts. Men sat outside their homes, faces dark with worry. Adia's heart pounded. What had happened? She did not have to wait long for an answer. She stepped forward, and the first villager who saw her gasped so loudly it was like thunder in the quiet. It's her. A ripple of voices followed. The cursed one. She has returned. Some backed away, clutching their children. Others murmured in shock. But no one, not a single soul, stepped forward to harm her. Because they were afraid. Adia stood tall, her chin lifted, her eyes burning with quiet defiance. Where is Jengo? She asked, her voice calm but heavy. The crowd hesitated. Then, an elder stepped forward. His face, once kind, was now creased with guilt. Adia, he murmured, almost in awe. We taught you. Where is Jengo? She interrupted. The elder hesitated. Then, he spoke the words that sent a fire through her veins. The warriors took him. Adia's breath caught. Took him. Who took him? She demanded. The elder's eyes darkened. The Red Claws. The Red Claws' wrath. Adia had heard stories of the Red Claws, but she had never seen them. They were a warband of raiders, merciless men who moved through the lands like a wildfire, leaving behind nothing but ash and sorrow. They raided villages, stole women, burned fields. And now, they had taken Jengo. Adia's hands curled into fists. A month ago, she would have hesitated. She would have asked herself if Jengo deserved her help after his betrayal. But now, she did not hesitate. She turned to the gathered villagers. Who leads this village now? The elder sighed. Mama Abena. Of course. Mama Abena, the woman who had cast her out, had risen to power in the wake of Jengo's disappearance. Adia's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. She had returned at the perfect time. And Mama Abena was about to learn what it meant to fear the woman she tried to destroy. The reckoning. Mama Abena sat on a wooden throne, carved with intricate symbols of power. She had not taken a chief's title, no, that would have been too bold, too soon. But she had become the shadow behind the throne, the whisper in the ears of the elders. She controlled Zubri now. And she was enjoying every second of it. Until Adia walked into her hall. The moment their eyes met, the room fell into silence. Mama Abena's fingers tightened around the wooden armrest. "You," she whispered, barely able to mask her shock. Adia smiled, not a kind smile. "You seem surprised, Mother," she said, stepping forward. "Did you really believe I would disappear?" Mama Abena recovered quickly. She leaned back, folding her arms, her lips curling in amusement. "You are either brave or foolish to return here, Adia." Adia did not break eye contact. "I have come for Jengo." Mama Abena laughed. "Your husband is gone, cast into the hands of warlords. Why should you care? He is the one who cast you out." Adia's heart tightened, but she did not let her resolve waver. "I did not come for words, Mama Abena. I came for justice." She reached into the folds of her robes and pulled out the woven grass charm, the very same one that had been placed near her heart to brand her as cursed. Mama Abena's laughter died. Adia tossed the charm onto the floor before the gathered elders. "Shall I tell them what this is?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some of the elders shifted uncomfortably. Mama Abena's eyes narrowed. "You play a dangerous game, girl," she hissed. Adia took another step forward. "Not a game. A truth. The charm you planted, the poison you mixed into my drink, it was all your doing. The only curse upon this village was your deceit." A gasp rippled through the elders. Mama Abena's jaw clenched. "You have no proof." Adia's smile did not waver. "You misunderstand, Mother," she said softly. "I did not come to ask for justice." She turned to the gathered villagers. "I came to take it." And then, she did something no one expected. She knelt. Before the elders. Before the villagers. Before everyone. And she placed her hands behind her back, as if in surrender. "If I am a liar," she said, "kill me now." The silence that followed was heavy as stone. Mama Abena's face paled. Because she knew. If she gave the order, if she had Adia killed, the village would question. And if they questioned, they would find the truth. Mama Abena hesitated. And that hesitation was her undoing. One of the elders, one of the very men who had sentenced Adia to exile, stood. "I believe her," he said. Then another. And another. Until every elder in the room had turned against Mama Abena. The old woman's breathing grew ragged. "You fools! She has bewitched you." But the village had already decided. Mama Abena had cast Adia away. Now, it was her turn to be cast out. A warrior's choice. That night, as the villagers gathered, Adia stood before them. "Jengo is still out there," she said. "And I am going to bring him back." A hush fell over the crowd. "You will die," someone whispered. Adia's smile did not falter. "Then I will die knowing I fought for what was mine." And as she stepped into the dark, not as a victim, but as a warrior, the village whispered her name with reverence. For the first time, they did not see her as a cursed woman. They saw her for what she truly was. A legend in the making. The warrior's road to redemption. The village of Zubri had seen many stories unfold beneath the ancient baobab tree. Tales of warriors, love, betrayal, and triumph echoed in the wind, carried by the voices of ancestors. But never before had it seen a woman rise from exile, break the chains of lies, and turn the tide of fate itself. Adia had returned, not as the woman they once cast out, but as a warrior with fire in her soul and thunder in her steps. And now, she stood before the village, ready to march into the lion's den. She would not beg. She would not plead. She would bring Jengo back, or she would burn the Red Claws camp to the ground shrine. The journey to the Red Claws camp. The Red Claws were ghosts in the night, raiders feared across the lands. They swept through villages like a plague, leaving ruin in their wake. Jengo had been their latest prize, taken in a brutal raid. If he was still alive, he was either a prisoner or already sold to a distant land. Adia did not allow herself to think of the latter. She gathered a small band, 5 warriors, men who had once fought beside Jengo. They were skeptical at first, their gazes wary. "You ask us to follow a woman into the Red Claws camp," one of them, Bero, sneered. "This is not a healer's fight." Adia met his gaze without flinching. "I do not need your trust," she said. "I need your swords. But if you are too afraid, leave now." Bero's lips curled, but he said nothing. None of them left. Because deep down, they all knew what she had done. She had toppled Mama Abena without spilling blood. She had taken her place back without raising a blade. If anyone could bring Jengo back, it was her. And so, under the cover of darkness, they set out across the wild plains, heading toward a fate none of them could predict. The camp of beasts. The Red Claws camp was built deep in the shadow of the Abudo cliffs, a jagged, black ridge known for swallowing those who wandered too close. Fires burned in the distance, flickering like restless spirits. The stench of blood and sweat filled the air. Adia crouched low behind a twisted tree, her eyes sharp. The camp was heavily guarded. Warriors with red-painted faces patrolled the outer rim, spears glinting in the moonlight. But where was Jengo? She scanned the camp, her heart pounding. Then, her breath hitched. There. A group of prisoners huddled near the center, chained like animals. And among them, Jengo. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, but his eyes burned with defiance. Adia clenched her fist. She had not come all this way to fail. She turned to her warriors. "We move silently. No unnecessary killing. We take Jengo and disappear before they know what happened." Bero smirked. "And if they do?" Adia's voice was like steel. "Then we show them why they should have feared a woman." The heist in the night. The group moved like shadows, slipping through the camp with the silence of spirits. Adia's heart pounded as they reached the prisoners. The chains were thick, rusted with age. Jengo lifted his head, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Adia," he whispered. "Quiet," she hissed, kneeling beside him. "We are leaving." A flicker of emotion crossed his face, shame, relief, something else. Then, a sound. The sharp snap of a twig. Adia turned. A Red Claw warrior stood behind them, eyes widening in alarm. For a split second, there was silence. Then, chaos dot a battle in the dark. The Red Claws erupted in shouts, their warriors rushing toward the prisoners. Adia moved fast. She lunged at the guard before he could sound the alarm, slamming a dagger into his ribs. He crumpled, but it was too late, the camp was awake. "Gio," she shouted. Bero smashed a chain with his axe, freeing the prisoners. Jengo staggered to his feet, his strength barely returning, but he reached for a discarded spear. Adia turned, facing the oncoming warriors. She had come this far. She would not fall now. The first Red Claw charged at her. She ducked low, swinging her blade upward, cutting deep into his leg. Another swung at her, but Jengo, *** quickened, but not broken, *** threw his spear, impaling the man before he could reach her. "Adia!" Jengo panted. "You came for me." Adia's eyes burned as she blocked another attack. "You were always mine to bring home." Their warriors fought savagely. But the Red Claws were many. For every one that fell, 3 more took their place. Adia's lungs burned. They couldn't hold out much longer. Then, a voice rang out. Enough. The battlefield froze. And from the darkness, a man stepped forward. The wolf of the Red Claws. He was taller than the others, his body wrapped in dark armor, his face streaked with blood-red paint. Komari. The leader of the Red Claws. His eyes settled on Adia, gleaming with curiosity. You are not a warrior, he mused. Yet you stand before me, unafraid. Adia met his gaze without flinching. I came for my husband. Komari smiled, slow and sharp. Bold. Foolish, but bold. He stepped closer. I have killed many men, he said. But never have I seen a woman walk into my den and fight beside warriors. His eyes narrowed. You intrigue me. Adia did not blink. Let him go. Komari chuckled. I could. But where would the fun be in that? He lifted a single hand. I will make you a trade. Adia's breath caught. A trade. Komari nodded. A challenge. You fight one of my men. If you win, you take Jengo and leave. He smiled. If you lose, you stay here. The air turned heavy. Barrow stiffened. Adia, no. Jengo shook his head. You don't have to do this. Adia raised her chin. I do. Her voice was clear, unwavering. I will fight. Komari's smile deepened. Then let us see if a woman can truly stand among men. He turned. Bring me Oba. A warrior stepped forward. And the moment Adia saw him, she knew. This would be the hardest battle of her life. The trial of blood and honor. The air in the Red Claws camp was thick with anticipation. Fires burned high, casting flickering shadows on the warriors who gathered in a great circle. The earth beneath them was stained with old battles, old victories, and old betrayals. And in the center, Adia stood, unshaken. Before her was Oba, Komari's greatest warrior. He was a mountain of a man, his body scarred with the stories of 100 battles. His hands gripped a curved blade, long and sharp. His face was painted in red, his eyes hungry for blood. Adia had never faced a warrior like him. But she did not falter. She had faced exile. She had faced betrayal. She had walked through fire to stand here. She was ready. The rules of the duel. Komari stepped forward, raising a single hand. The fight will be to first blood or death, whichever comes first, he declared. If you fall, you die. If you yield, you become mine. His lips curled in amusement. And if you win? He turned to the warriors around him, chuckling. Then you will live with your man, and the Red Claws will honor the deal. Laughter rippled through the warband. They did not believe she would win. Oba rolled his shoulders, the muscles flexing beneath his war paint. Are you ready to die, woman? He sneered. Adia's lips curved into a slow smile. You talk too much. A roar of laughter erupted from the crowd. Even Komari smirked. Then let the battle begin. A drum sounded once, a deep, echoing boom. And Oba charged. The dance of death. Adia moved. She was not the strongest. She was not the biggest. But she was the fastest. Oba's blade sliced the air where she had been moments ago, but Adia had already sidestepped, slipping away like smoke. She dropped low, sweeping her leg beneath him, but Oba was quicker than she thought. He leapt back, and before she could recover, his fist slammed into her ribs. Pain exploded through her side, knocking the breath from her lungs. The warriors cheered. Adia staggered back, tasting blood in her mouth. But she did not fall. She wiped her lips, eyes burning. Oba grinned. You fight well, for a. Adia moved first. She darted forward, feinting left, but striking right, her dagger slashing deep into his shoulder. Oba let out a roar of pain. The crowd fell silent. First blood. Komori raised a hand. It is over. But Oba did not stop. With a snarl, he lunged again, his blade coming down like thunder. Adia spun, her dagger catching his wrist, redirecting the force of his attack. His blade buried itself in the dirt. And in that split second, she struck. She drove her knee into his stomach, then slammed her dagger's hilt into his temple. Oba's eyes rolled back. He collapsed, unconscious, onto the blood-stained earth. The silence was absolute. Then, a roar of shock and awe. The Red Claws had never seen a fight like this. A woman, standing victorious over their best warrior. It was unthinkable. But it was undeniable. Adia had won the prize of honor. Komori studied her for a long moment. Then, he laughed. A deep, booming sound that sent shivers through the warriors. You are more than you seem, woman. He turned to his men, raising his arms. She has bested Oba. And we are warriors of our word. Let them go. A murmur ran through the crowd, but no one challenged him. A warrior's honor was sacred. A death of battle was a death written in blood. Jengo, still weak from captivity, stumbled toward Adia. She caught him before he could fall. You. His voice was hoarse. You came back for me. Adia's grip on him tightened. Yes, she whispered. Because I remember who you were. Even if you forgot who I was. Shame flickered across his face. I never forgot you, Adia. She searched his eyes. And for the first time, she saw it, the regret, the sorrow, the understanding of what he had done. She let out a slow breath. Forgiveness would not come easily. But it would come. Because she was no longer the woman he abandoned. She was something greater. And together, they walked out of the Red Claws camp as legends. They returned to Zubri. The journey home was different. Adia did not return as an outcast. She did not return as a broken woman. She returned as a victor. The villagers gathered at the gates, eyes wide in disbelief as they saw Jengo, alive, whole, standing beside the woman they once cast out. Bero, who had once doubted her, knelt before her. You have proven yourself stronger than any of us, he said. We are in your debt, Adia. The elders stepped forward, the same elders who had banished her. One of them swallowed hard. We were wrong. You are no curse woman. You are the heart of Zubri. Adia said nothing for a long moment. Then, she turned to the gathered villagers. Do you see now, she said, her voice carrying across the air. Strength is not in the blade. It is in the heart. It is in the fire that refuses to die, no matter how much the world tries to smother it. The people bowed their heads. And in that moment, Adia knew. She had won more than just a battle. She had won her place in history, the fate of Mama Abena. One last thing remained. Mama Abena. She had fled the village when Adia's return shattered her control. But she did not run far. She was found days later, alone, wandering the farmlands, her once commanding voice reduced to whispers. Her mind, once so sharp and cruel, had turned against her. It was as if the spirits themselves had judged her, stripping her of everything. And so, in the end, the woman who had tried to drive Adia mad was the one who lost her own mind. Fitting, Adia thought. Some punishments do not need swords. Only time. A legacy forged in fire. Days turned to weeks. Weeks turned to months. And the story of Adia, the woman who was cast out, who returned as a warrior, who reclaimed her honor and her love, became legend. Men spoke of her strength. Women whispered of her resilience. Children sang her name in the fields, as a reminder that even in the face of cruelty, even when the world tries to break you, You rise. You fight. And you win.